Character is interesting when half the fandom calls him a walking red flag while the other half cannot stop defending him. That is exactly what Leonidas from Nantua is. At first glance, he seems impossible to like. He is arrogant, flirtatious, emotionally attached, manipulative, and openly self absorbed. He sleeps with wealthy women, uses social situations to his advantage, and rarely pretends to be morally upright. Even his introduction reflects this contradiction perfectly. Leonidas first appears while saving the female protagonist, a genuinely heroic act, only to immediately start boasting about how women naturally prefer men like him. Not exactly Prince Charming, if you'd ask me. And the story does not try to hide any of this. Romans gossip about him constantly. They call him a courtesan, an actor who built his wealth not just through talent, but through wealthy patronesses. What makes it even more fascinating is that the rumors are actually true. Leonidas openly embraces that image. At one point, he even describes himself as a loose man, saying he would sleep with a crone of 70 if it benefited him. So, no, he's not written as an idealized male lead. If anything, he's the kind of man most people would stay away from in real life. But the deeper you go into Nantua, the more you realize the story is doing something far more complex with him. Because Leonidas is not simply a playboy. He's led, psychologically messy, and deeply shaped by the world around him. Leonidas was originally a Germanic slave and the illegitimate son of a Roman nobleman. Even though he grew up in the same household as his legitimate half-brother, he was never truly treated as family. His father may have been a generous master, but he was never really a father. And that distinction matters. Being an ex-slave, a former comedy actor, and later a Greek tragedy performer, taught Leonidas something brutal very early in life. His value depends entirely being useful, entertaining, attractive, or desirable to others. Roman society constantly reminds him that he exists beneath them, and because of that, almost everything about his personality feels performative. His charm is not just confidence, it is survival. Leonidas understands exactly how people see him, and he learns to weaponize that perception before it can be used against him. That is what makes him so fascinating. The story reinforces this in deeply uncomfortable ways. There is a Roman woman, for example, who becomes obsessed with him, but what he feels is not love, it is entitlement. She insults him, ignores his boundaries, mocks the people he cares about, and believes he should tolerate it simply because she is Roman, while he is socially beneath her. And that dynamic reveals something important about Leonidas' life. People desire him, obsess over him, and consume him, but they rarely respect him. That distinction changes everything. Once you understand that, his detached behavior stops feeling like typical playboy behavior and starts feeling like a defense mechanism. In Leonidas' world, intimacy is constantly tied to power imbalance, objectification, social status, or emotional possession. So naturally, he keeps people at a distance. Still, there are moments where the mask slips instantly, especially when it comes to his family. Apart from his mother, the person he loved most deeply, his feelings toward his half-brother are painfully complicated. Gratitude and resentment coexist inside him at the same time. His half-brother freed him from slavery, yes, but his mother still remained enslaved. So Leonidas cannot fully hate him, but he also cannot fully forgive the system surrounding him either. Then there is his niece. One of the saddest details in Nantua is when Leonidas only visits his niece after her death and avoids it during her final days. This is more avoidance than cruelty or carelessness. His niece represents the possibility of him genuinely belonging to the family instead of merely existing beside them as someone they own. These reasons are why the character works so well. The more you understand him, the more you realize that nearly all of his worst traits are responses to humiliation, class hierarchy, slavery, and lifelong objectification. Even his arrogance toward Roman society starts to make sense. Leonidas see the hypocrisy clearly. Romans condemn vulgarity while exploiting people like him. They glorify purity while objectifying women. They preach honor while treating slaves and actors as socially disposable. And Leonidas notices all all of it. Therefore, reducing him to just another toxic main lead completely misses the point of his character. Yes, he can be rude, manipulative, emotionally avoidant, and reckless, but Non-Toa actually explores where those traits come from instead of turning them to empty bad boy aesthetics. Honestly, Leonidas become more interesting the more uncomfortable truth you learn about him. Because underneath all the arrogance, seduction, theatrical confidence, and charm is someone who learned very early in life that people always desire pieces of him before ever seeing him as fully human. And that is exactly why you cannot judge him from the surface alone. If you enjoy psychologically led characters, morally messy dynamics, and protagonists who genuinely feel shaped by their environment rather than copied from stock archetypes, then Non-Toa is absolutely worth reading. Adios.